Well, I wouldn't be the person I am without creativity. And it's very challenging, but it's also what makes life so good and sticky. There's a couple of processes that I go through when I think about creativity. I think about it through food. I always think about it's like a crescendo. You want to build this up, and then you want to drop it, and then you want it to be very contradicting and have complexity. But for the guest, it should just be like one bite. But there's a lot of things that needs to happen in there. And that's my creative process. Or when I think about it, like being from Ethiopia, growing up in Scandinavia, living in Harlem, there's a lot of contradictions and complexities and all that. So the creativity follows my experience.
That's Marcus Samuelsson, an award-winning chef, restaurateur, and cookbook author. And I'm Josephine Reed for NEA Arts Online. If you polled restaurant critics and asked them to name some of the most creative chefs working in the country today, the name Marcus Samuelsson is sure to be close to the top of every list. For a younger chef, Marcus Samuelsson has already had a long and storied career. Here are some of the highlights. At 24, Samuelsson became executive chef of Aquavit, and soon after that became the youngest ever to receive a 3-star restaurant review from the New York Times. In 2003, he was named Best Chef New York City by the James Beard Foundation. Marcus served as guest chef at the White House under the Obama administration, where he planned and executed the administration's first state dinner, which honored Prime Minister Singh of India and 400 guests. He's been a UNICEF ambassador since 2000, and when he competed against 21 other chefs in the Bravo TV series Top Chef Masters, winning the competition, he donated the $115,000 prize to UNICEF. He owns a number of restaurants around the world. His first, and the one closest to his heart, is the wildly successful Red Rooster restaurant in Harlem. And he's written award-winning cookbooks and has just released another called Red Rooster Cookbook, the story of food and hustle in Harlem. Food has clearly been Samuelsson's life, and he traces it back to his own family in Sweden.
On my dad's side, they were all fishermen. So every summer when school was out, we went up to the village of Smögen on the west coast of Sweden, and we were fishing from June to August. And not just fishing, because once you're done with the fish, you got to clean the boat, and then you got to also take care of the mackerel and the crab and the lobster and the cod. And that led me to preparing food, whether we smoked it, whether we cured it, or whether we cooked it. My grandmother's house, the first thing that hits you is the smell of food, whether it's chicken stock, chicken soup on in the kitchen, whether it's freshly mushrooms that's been picked, or berries on the kitchen table that needs to be picked. There was always a season for something.
After graduating from the Culinary Institute in Sweden, Marcus trained in kitchens around the world, most particularly in Switzerland and France. It was a tough, regimented education. There was no sympathy or patience for the commies, the name for the young apprentice chefs. They were supposed to shut up, do exactly as they were told, do it quickly, and do it perfectly. So where was the creativity in all of this?
Well, my creative process is the notepad that I've had with me through all my life, right? Because at that point, there was no creative outlet for me. I was a number as a commie. Every year they had about 60 commies come in, 20 got fired, 40 got to stay. But no one really asked you, hey, does anyone have an idea? That wasn't the time. It was not the time for me to do that. The time for me there was to be a very committed commie that can deal with the task at hand. On my spare time, that's when it was the outlet for me to be creative. So very often on our days off, we cooked. And it could be my Malaysian roommate that, wanted to know more about Swedish herring, or it could be our friend from South Africa that brought up, a dish from Cape Town. So it was these potlucks dinners that we all as chefs and commies, we played card, ate, drank, and we're 21 and just did stupid stuff. But it was through food but also the narrative where we came from. So those were our creative outlets. And we started that question. What if I mixed this Malaysian curry with grilled turbo? Simple things like that. What if I used the galanga that this Maria from Singapore brought mixed with the brandan that is very French? What happens? Everything didn't work, but it was through these sessions you started to think about, whoa, the world is a smaller place. What if I mix?
Marcus learned what it takes to cook in a restaurant.
Cooking is this constant dialogue between artistry, craftsmanship, and also a long marathon, right? Cooking is every day. So it's a marathon. It's a brutal long sport in that sense. But you also get better as a craftsman if you stay on it. And you got to make sure that you don't crank it so hard so you kill your artistry. But it's also a wonderful place of camaraderie, family. When I think about your family, your tribe, cooking is a tribe. It's tribal. You could have completely different starting points in life, completely different religious or languages or political views, but in the kitchen you're coming together because you need one another.
When Marcus decided to open his own restaurant in New York City, he took his time. He knew he wanted the restaurant to be in Harlem. He wanted to honor the neighborhood's traditional food and its history, but not replicate it. He had to perform a creative juggling act to make this happen.
I have a lot of respect for what came before me. I lived in Harlem for a long time before I opened the restaurant. I always say, the menu of Red Rooster is really decided by Harlem. Obviously, we cook it. But what I mean with that is that I would say 40% of the menu is always inspired by the African-American migration. It's the soul, it's the base, it's the core of our restaurant. 40-50% has that inspiration. It's Harlem, it should have. Then, as Harlem is moving constantly, El Barrio east of us, Puerto Rican based, but also Mexican now. So there are a lot of dishes that has both Puerto Rican influence, but also Mexican influence. Then Harlem is also a place for immigrants, other immigrants. So I'm an immigrant. So a lot of the food has inspiration from immigrants. Like there's a West African community in Harlem. There's a Jewish community in Harlem. There's always been an Italian American community in Harlem. That's why we'll always have several dishes that has an Italian spin on it. So that is how I think through the menu, constantly juxtaposition these things.
When Marcus Samuelsson opened the Red Rooster in 2010, Harlem was undergoing rapid gentrification, and many of the local people, seeing skyrocketing costs and a neighborhood that seemed to have no place for them anymore, looked at newcomers suspiciously. Marcus did not want the Red Rooster to be an interloper in Harlem. He wanted it to be a neighborhood restaurant, but one that also had an international reputation. Once again, it took a marriage of experience and imagination to come up with the solution.
How do we create trust from the neighborhood and the community? And that for me came down to allowing walk-ins to come in, because pretty quickly we realized we had 3 customers. We had the visitor that was from either Kansas or Stockholm or Paris, and they very much booked Red Rooster online. That third day, second day when they're in New York. Then you had the New Yorker that was still pretty traditional, that called or maybe booked online, but it was a night out. We're going uptown and we might go to the Studio Museum or the Apollo. And then thirdly was the Harlemite that said, hey, this is my neighborhood. I'm not making a reservation in my own neighborhood. Why would I do that? Which perfectly makes sense, right? So it was really about understanding these 3 behavior of customers and allowing all 3 to be celebrated at the same time.
A lot of thought and imagination went into designing the restaurant so that it would be part of the neighborhood. The whole restaurant is an open design, neither shutting out the street nor the kitchen.
I thought a lot about Lenox Avenue and how we can celebrate this iconic boulevard. And I wanted the kitchen to be the theater, so the stage that pulls you in. So this light, this open fire that you see whether you're outside Lenox and looking in. So the focal points are really the big bar. So it says, hey, yeah, you're welcome. And it's not a service bar. It's a bar that whether you have a ginger ale or a cocktail in the middle of the day, you are welcome. So it's a moving piece, right? The bar is big and things happening. And then you come into the dining room and you constantly, there's dialogue of energy. So it's very transparent. When I started working in a restaurant, everything was closed off. You were not supposed to see the kitchen. The dining room was behind the curtain, so to speak. The service bar was over here. Everything was hush hush, you're not supposed to see. So we built the opposite of that. We built a very transparent restaurant where you can see the chefs, you can see into the dishwash pit, and you can constantly be connected to the energy in the bar. So that says, for me, brasserie, fun, excited, community, versus, oh, what's behind that wall over there? I worked for so long in a restaurant that was all behind that wall over there.
The walls of the restaurant are covered in art that changes regularly. And then there's the music. Live jazz with a funky edge every night.
I feel like we're inspired by Harlem. And when I think about Harlem as a culture, iconic neighborhood, music and art, it's very upfront and centered. Our art and our music, it's not based on what's popular. It's part of the piece. Right now we have an art exhibit by Miss Lana Turner that is her clothing exhibit, clothing that she's been wearing for the last 40 years. She is a major figure in our community, so it fits. We're gonna then after that gonna go into Gordon Parks, but we also have art from Ebony Patterson to Lorna Simpson to just iconic figures that's been part of the Harlem artistic scene for a long time. Whether they worked at Studio Museum or they sold art down the street. Musically, same thing. You know, when we walk in a neighborhood where so much of coming to the Apollo, coming to Harlem to play and perform was a big deal. It still is a big deal. So to honor that, I felt like having the music experience really sets the tone on how you dine and celebrate in this place. We're competing with different things today that we didn't compete with before. The attention span of people not being on their smartphones. So sometimes you need an interruption like music said. When you dine with us, put your phone down, be social, be seen, talk to your neighbor.
His vision works. When I visited the Red Rooster, there wasn't a cell phone in sight. The communal tables were filled. There were conversations between tables. And on a rainy Monday night, the place was packed, the bar was jumping, and the floor and kitchen staff joined the customers in nodding and moving to the beat of live music.
I think that allowing our guests and allowing our staff to enjoy all the experiences is important because we want to be an upbeat place. Days like yesterday, it's hard days. It's hot. It's July in New York. It's rainy and stormy. But once you're inside, it doesn't matter. You're welcome. You come in, forget all your troubles of the day, and start celebrating. If you think about the word restaurant, it goes back to the word what restaurant means. It means to restore a community. And you did think about that, right? Because restaurant jobs can't be outsourced. Very few jobs can be outsourced in a restaurant. So you have this incredible opportunity to bring in people from the community, servers, cooks, hosts, etc., vegetables, farms, local fish from the community. And you can then present it to the locals, and it kind of had to be checked by the locals first. And then both the restaurant and the locals said, hey, this is our place. We built this together. Once you've created that, which is very rare for a restaurant, once you created that, it's magic.
That's Marcus Samuelsson, an award-winning chef, restaurateur, and author. You can find the Red Rooster in Harlem at Lenox Avenue off 125th Street. Or you can pick up Marcus's recently published Red Rooster Cookbook, the story of food and hustle in Harlem. For NEA Arts Online, I'm Josephine Reed. Thanks for listening.